Did you know some of the most famous space missions involved quick fixes, duct tape, and the right tools at the right time? In this video, we're counting down 5 real-life MacGyver moments in space, clever, unexpected solutions that helped astronauts adapt, survive, and get the job done. Apollo 11 is remembered for the first moon landing, but behind the headlines was a small issue that could have led to bigger problems down the line. After landing on the moon, while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were preparing for their moonwalk inside the lunar module, Aldrin accidentally bumped a control panel with his bulky backpack. In the process, he broke off a small plastic knob from a circuit breaker. It was the engine arm circuit breaker, used to activate the systems that control the ascent engine. Without it, the process for leaving the moon could be compromised. They noticed the broken knob after returning to the lunar module, where it was lying on the dusty floor. After a quiet back and forth with Houston, Aldrin began looking for a practical solution. The stem of the breaker was still visible, but recessed into the panel. When they were ready to depart, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a felt tip pen, and used it to carefully press the exposed switch. The circuit engaged, the system armed, problem solved. A simple fix, but one that avoided unnecessary risk and kept the mission right on track. Practical, preventive, professional. Apollo 13 began as a mission to the moon, but it ended as a race to bring the crew home alive. Just over 2 days into the mission, disaster struck. An oxygen tank exploded. The crew suddenly found themselves without power and stuck in a damaged spacecraft. With the command module crippled, they were forced to move into the lunar module, which had its own functional air system. But the lunar module wasn't designed for this kind of emergency. Its life support system was meant to sustain only 2 astronauts for a short trip, to land on the moon and return. Now, it had to support 3 astronauts for 4 days, twice as long, with 1 extra person on board. The filtration system quickly became overloaded. Although there were additional filters available in the command module, there was a major problem: they didn't fit. The command module filters were square, the lunar module sockets were round. Classic. Mission Control jumped into action. Engineers worked tirelessly designing a solution using only materials the astronauts had on board: plastic bags, cardboard, a spacesuit hose, and duct tape. Following step-by-step instructions from Houston, the crew built an improvised filter. Against all odds, it worked. It wasn't elegant, but it bought them time they needed to get home safely. Fast forward to Apollo 17, the final crewed mission to the moon. Astronaut Gene Cernan was preparing to take the lunar rover out for a drive when, oops, he accidentally broke off part of the rover's rear fender with a hammer stashed in his suit pocket. No big deal, right? Unfortunately, it was. Without the fender, the rover kicked up massive clouds of moon dust. And moon dust is no joke. It clung to everything: suits, equipment, and even visors. It quickly became a serious problem. Cernan tried to tape the fender back on, but the repair didn't hold. Back in the lunar module, while the astronauts rested, engineers on Earth came up with a clever fix. They instructed the crew to use maps, clamps, and of course duct tape to craft an improvised fender. That improvised fix held up for more than 80 miles. And they even brought the dusty fender back to Earth as a souvenir. As a final bit of fun before re-entering the lunar module, his colleague, astronaut Jack Schmitt, tossed the mission's only hammer as far as he could across the moon's surface. That hammer still lies there today, a memorable artifact and the most recent object touched by a human on the moon. In November 1995, Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield arrived at Russia's Mir space station, aboard the space shuttle Atlantis. It was supposed to be a straightforward mission, dock with the station, open the hatch, and greet the Russian crew on the other side. But when he reached the hatch, things didn't go quite as planned. Instead of an open passage, Hadfield found the hatch tied shut with multiple cords. The cords were wrapped so densely that it looked like a tangled spider web. This wasn't covered in any training manual. On the other side, the Mir cosmonauts were already knocking and waiting eagerly to meet the shuttle crew. With no time to waste, Hadfield reached into his pocket and pulled out the one tool he had, a Swiss Army knife. Carefully, he began cutting through the cords, slicing away the web one layer at a time. It took a while, but eventually he freed the locking mechanisms, equalized the pressure, and opened the hatch. The crew finally met face to face just as planned, only after a bit of unexpected space improvisation. It wasn't a dramatic emergency, but it was a moment that stuck with him. Using a Swiss Army knife to solve a critical issue in space? Not exactly something they teach you in astronaut school, but it worked. And ever since, Chris Hadfield has made one thing clear: never leave the planet without a Swiss Army knife. You've probably heard the story NASA spent millions developing a pen for space, while the Soviets just used pencils. Great joke, not so great on facts. Here's what really happened. At first, both NASA and the Soviets used pencils, but pencils weren't ideal. Pencil tips could snap off and float around in zero gravity, where they might damage the equipment or even be inhaled. Plus, pencils are flammable, which is a dangerous mix in a sealed spacecraft. Then came along Paul C. Fisher. He didn't wait for NASA to ask. Fisher invented the space pen independently, funding it with his own money. The pen used a gas-pressurized cartridge to push out a special gel-like ink. The ink stayed thick until it reached the rolling ball at the tip, where it turned smooth and started to flow. So it could write in zero gravity, upside down, or even underwater. In 1965, Fisher took his pen to NASA. After some testing, NASA decided to use the pens for future Apollo missions. They purchased around 400 pens in 1967 at just $2.95 each. And the Soviets eventually started using them too. Like a space-age MacGyver moment, Fisher found a practical, well-engineered solution to a tricky problem. The solution worked, and the space pen is still used today on the International Space Station. A lasting example of smart design meeting real-world needs in space. Whether it's a pen, a Swiss Army knife, or a trusty duct tape, sometimes the difference between success and failure in space isn't in the tools, but in how resourceful you can be. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and stick around for more interesting space stories. Thanks for watching, until next time.